understood what is the meaning of raising children. And this poem copies I brought for each of you. While we are interpreting it together, I urge you to have each a copy of this and to not miss the points by reading it yourself also and taking it back home with you. You can. So can you see if there are 4 or less? 2, 1. Thank you. All of us have it? You have. Sorry. So this, what Khalil Gibran has to say and how we will interpret it together, okay, is what the rest of the session will be. See, it's only in a group we can do. And believe me, in a small group we can do it even better. Okay, so the 10 of us in this room, including Meeta, will interpret this thing on what Khalil Gibran has written on child raising. In essence, before starting this poem also, what I interpret the poet Khalil Gibran to write in this, the philosopher to be writing in this is 2 things. One is, we should always believe that the coming generation is going to be better than the earlier generation. Because it's the way nature is designed. Evolution is that. Every coming generation will be better on all counts. Strength, intelligence, refinement, and even ethics, even morality, even goodness. Every coming generation will be better than the previous generation. This we should have a belief in. And the second point is that parents should not be over possessive of their child. By being over possessive of the child, you're not doing good. Far from it. You're damaging the child very badly. By being over possessive of the child, you're damaging your own child in a very big manner. Okay, so now let's interpret this poem, which is written by Khalil Gibran, together you and I, and together as a group. So tell me if it is right. He starts like that. Your children are not your children. They are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. So he says, your children are not your children. They are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. This is how he says, you should not be possessive of them. You should be detached. You should not think that the child is not an independent entity, but it is just mine. For that, the easiest way to take that interpretation is, your children are not your children. They are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. Life's longing for itself means every form of life has a longing for itself. Is that correct or no? One copy for Anju. Every form of life has a innate method of propagating itself, whether it be plant kingdom or animal kingdom. The lions have to ensure that the breed of lions continue. The horse has to ensure that the horses continue. Therefore, they bring in the next generation of horses, and therefore the lemon tree brings the next generation of lemon tree. Do you know a banana tree, after it gives fruits, the tree doesn't give fruits again, but gives generation to a next banana tree, and then the third generation of a banana tree. It propagates itself. Isn't that true about human beings also? That we've come to play a role of giving to this world a next generation of human beings. Because human race should be eternal. That will be automatically being done collectively, individually, and over generations. That we have a role to play. But we don't remember so much that child's grandchildren's child, etc. Just like most of us would know our parent, grandparents, possibly some will know great grandparents, and many of us will not remember our forefathers beyond great grandparent and above also. So it's not important to think of it this way, that this is the child and the child is something that I possess as mine. But to think of it this way, that your children are not your children, they are sons and daughters of life longing for itself. Life wanted to propagate, so ek aur generation aa gaya.
Or we can say they are God's children.
They are God's children, fantastic, even better. Because this nature and God are the same thing, na? Very often God is what is nature. Nature has made us such that every species, not only human beings, whether the ants or the caterpillars or the butterflies or the lion, everyone wants to propagate and not become extinct. On their own they don't want to become extinct. Right now, just because we want to propagate, that means there is an urge for life forms to come up with a next generation and to propagate this race into furtherance, into eternity if possible. Okay, so your children are not your children, they are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you but not from you, and though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. See how well he chooses his words. He says they come through you but not from you. Two preposition. From me means mera hai, it's mine. But through you means they touched you. You were essential, but they passed through you, and now they are independent entities on their own. Instruments. They are the medium for it. They are the reason for it. But they are not something who can say that I own it, I own my child, and become over-encompassing about them. So they come through you. Without you being there, the child would not have been born. Yes, that was your role. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. Now he goes next, and it gets right from the beginning. See the choice of words, how he explains this concept. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. Does your child have same thoughts as you? So you may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. Now to give them your love, you should have that time to build that relationship. So people who say quality time is important, the quantum of time is not important, is all humbug. There are some things that require time. To give love, you have to spend time with each other and to give that feeling of comfort to the child. So
Love plus freedom.
Love plus freedom. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. You're really interpreting it very, very well. Very well. So that's the fun of interpreting it together. You must feel comfortable at giving them the freedom. So you may give them your love, but not your thoughts. Because if you impose your thoughts also, freedom is gone. Right? You should be comfortable that they have their own thoughts, and you should encourage them. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. Is that right? Would you agree with it? You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. Every generation will be better, and every generation will go further. Last generation, a few generations before would have never thought of the mobile phone being available. But this generation has seen it and used it. Wireless phone, speak anywhere, etc., clear and all that. So not only technology, everything else also, they will see a lot of tomorrow, which is not in your destiny to see, but they are destined to see it. So, you may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You should be knowing that many things, because the next generation will see, your children, your grandchildren will see, the previous generation would never get a chance to know about that. And that's how it's going to be. Right? Now this is important. You may strive, the word, see how well he uses. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life does not go backward, nor tarries with yesterday. Tarries means hangs around. Life does not hang around with yesterday. Okay, that's the fundamental of nature or God or whatever you call it. Life, nature, God, all is the same. Life nor tarries with yesterday. Now most of us think that we are giving a good example to our child by telling that you follow the example of your father, follow the footsteps of your uncle, of your grandfather, grandmother, ye wo, you know. But have you ever thought about it like that? That we can learn from children? We can learn from their cheerfulness, their spontaneity, the way they are carefree, the way they may fight with their friends and yet make up. Isn't these things where adults have often failed? And we carry grouses and egos much beyond comfort level, which are not there spontaneously in children. So why not observe children? One of my friend in my Rotary Club told me that one of the best de-stressor is every day for some time behave like a child. You know, just spontaneously laugh and become carefree, and for that many moments and that many hours, you'll be stress-free.
Parents should learn from children, not teach them.
Yes. So that's what he says. And he used so good words, you must strive to be like them and seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday. Now the last stanza that he comes in is where is the philosopher and the spiritualist all combined. That's what Khalil Gibran's best in this poem comes here in the last part. He compares the parent to be a bow. Now think of a bow and arrow. The child to be the arrow, the parent to be the bow, and the archer who holds the bow is God. The one who's holding the bow and the arrow is the archer, and the archer is no one but God. And see how beautifully he puts the last stanza. You are the bows. He's addressing to the parents. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite. To God, time, distance, all these dimensions, he can go infinitely backward, infinitely forward. So archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite. And he bends you with his might. And the archer bends you with his might. The archer, while pulling the bow is pulling the arrow, is bending the bow. Na? So, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. And the archer bends the bow with his might, so that the arrows may go swift and far. See, if the child, the arrow, has to be fast and has to cover distances beyond, if you want the child to flourish full, right? And for that to happen, the bow will have to be bent, and will have to be bent with the might of God. And the more better the bow is bent, the more the child will flourish, right? And he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending at the archer's hand be for gladness. While the bow is getting bent in the archer's hand, he is appealing to the bow that let it be for gladness that you are being bent. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, he's not telling the bow to sacrifice into pain. Huh? He's saying both are pleasurable. He says, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. See, the bow has to be stable. And the parent has to not be so perfectionist that he is competing with the child. The parent has to not say, I am also arrow, you are also arrow, let's do a running race. The parent has to say, I am parent, let me give stability. You are child, let me give you the stability which you will use as a fulcrum for you to be able to go far and swift and flourish. And my parent did that with me, therefore I could. Now I will play the role of a bow.
Changing our children's parents has to take them first.
Yes, absolutely. Right? So, once you interpret this philosophy, then all other anxiety